Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for attending the BB Dev Days session on getting started with Sky UX. We'll begin after a couple of brief comments here. My name is Dan Whitaker. I'm the moderator for the session. I've been at Blackbaud 9 years as a program manager in the tuition management practice. And the format for our session here today is John White is our presenter. He has about 20 minutes of content that he will share, and he'll save time at the end to answer any questions that you may have. And there is a chat window that's available to drop in questions or comments or whatever you might want to include. We see some great graphics already in there. Thanks for those. And then at the end of the session, there's a brief 4-question survey that we're going to ask you all to complete. And with that, I'll introduce, here's John White, and he's a developer on our Sky UX team.
Thanks, Dan. All right, so like Dan said, I'm a developer on the Sky UX team. I've been with Blackbaud about 4 years now. So Sky UX is our front-end framework. Today, we're going to do a hands-on workshop remotely, so you have to use your own equipment, I guess. We're going to walk it through a example single-page application, a spa, doing the initial setup. We're going to add some features to it. And we're going to talk about how to keep the code healthy as we start setting this thing up. So Sky UX is a front-end framework. We like to think its components as kind of Lego, where like the right pieces and kind of imagination kind of put together a nice web experience. And it's possible to make something really great. All right, we're going to dive right in. The workshop today is going to use a GitHub repository, and I'll put that link in the chat now for you guys to reference. And then I'll go ahead and start the demo portion of this. Let's do a quick sketch of what we're going to build. It'll have a list of records in a table, and then clicking on a record will show it in a flyout view on the right-hand side, and where you'll still see the list of records on the left. And then we'll need a form to make changes to the records. Let's dive in. So we'll start by setting up a new project. We're going to speed run through this because it's helpful to see and talk through, but maybe it's not action-packed. So npx angular CLI new generates a new project. We'll give it a name, and that will also be its directory. Once that project is created, we'll cd into the project directory. We have 3 configuration commands. You don't have to memorize these, it's just the initial setup. Next, we'll add a set of packages that help with maintenance on the project. The first package is called Prettier, and it has code formatting. The next package is called ESLint. Linting is process and programming for finding things like missing semicolons and other syntax errors that are easy to miss, but definitely lead to bugs. Yeah, so ESLint provides an extra set of eyes while you're coding. We're going to add the SkyUX packages package. This will add some style sheets to your Angular JSON file, and it also serves as a meta package when you run ng update. It will cascade through all dependencies of our SkyUX packages. Now that we have all that installed, we can use the Angular generator command to create a component for the Welcome to SkyUX message. So let's take a second to review the SkyUX documentation for the components we're going to use in our welcome page. We'll use a SkyUX alert to show an alert message, provide some context. And we'll use some action buttons to provide next steps for working with SkyUX. We're going to finish up the project configuration, then we'll get more into the code. So after each milestone, we're going to run prettier to format the code. For this first step, we have to create the Git repository to commit to. So run git init and git add. Then to verify the code, we run the lint and test commands. So we know our project is in a good place. And then we can commit that code. That's the process for setting up a new project. But for today's workshop, we're going to use an existing repository that basically has all the answers built in. And we're going to walk through that code rather than you watch me type it here. So let's go to a new directory and clone down the BB Dev Days Learn SkyUX project. Or you can choose to run the project in a browser, either through StackBlitz or through GitHub's code spaces if you have a GitHub account. Once you've cloned the code, switch to the 01 Create Project branch, which has the results from the code we just generated, as well as the filled in welcome page content. We can go ahead and run that code now and see that actually working in a browser. So in the browser, we see a very basic page using a SkyUX alert and action button components. Pretty straightforward. Next, we're going to build out our data services. Most of this is not SkyUX specific, except for this one piece around sticky settings. The SkyUX has an interface for providing kind of persistent settings when you like resize a column in an interface or make other UI changes, where if you go away and come back, you might expect those changes to persist. We call that sticky settings. So we provide an interface for that, and you would have to wire it up to your own backend, or in this case, we're going to save those settings to the browser local storage. We're going to generate some other types and interfaces that we're going to use in as our data model for this demonstration. We're going to create a persistence service that'll talk to a HTTP static file backend and then save to browser storage. Let's go ahead and switch over to the implementation now. So if you look here, we have the app UI config, which implements our SkyUX sticky settings. It leverages session storage provided by the document injection token, accessing the Windows session storage property. We're providing a persistence service, and this takes care of initializing the data either from session storage or from a static JSON file, and then keeping that session storage up to date as the data changes. And then we have a separate data service that will talk to the components to load the data and then broadcast changes back so that persistence can keep up. All right, let's stop that. We've got our project, we've got our data service. Now things start to get interesting. We can start using SkyUX components more in depth. So first, we're going to create the record page view. Let's go look at the documentation for record pages. As you can see, we provide a model for record pages as this very simple series of boxes on a page and very clean layout for looking at data. And here is the markup that would create that page. Easily to copy into your own project. We're also going to use a description list in our record view. These are simple key value pairs of facts that get shown on a record page. And it provides both a horizontal and vertical layout and copy that code as well. So we'll generate the scaffolding for those components, create a view, a description list, because that's going to be a pattern we repeat a few times, and then description list items. We can take a look at that code. Passes linting, pass the test, I hope. And then we can go take a look at that in the browser. So here it is, the record page. Not too complicated. Key value pairs and a very simple record view. The code for that, we create an age pipe as a way of just showing relative age based on their birthday. And we create these our own description list that kind of wraps the Sky description list in a Skybox component, and that's just the reusable pattern we're going to use a couple times in our view. And over here in the view, you can see we're using that pattern a couple times. And overall, the page is based on the Sky record view example from our code examples in the documentation. And this is the TypeScript that powers the view. In this case, we're injecting an ID token, and that'll be important later. We want to call up the view from a couple different contexts. We want to be able to inject that ID. All right, moving on. Our next goal is to set up a form so we can start adding records and modifying existing records. So let's go take a look at the form design guidelines in the SkyUX documentation. Here we talk through some of the philosophy behind our forms and form layout. There's a lot to read here. One of the key components of forms is going to be our input boxes. Our input box component takes care of a lot of details that are easy to miss and handles accessibility and kind of consistent patterns around required validation, hint text, other helpful pieces that bring a successful form together. I'd encourage you to go read the documentation more in depth. Let's start generating our form. So we're going to have a view page that wraps the view, and that'll also have an edit button. And then we're going to have an edit form and an edit service. The service will just allow us to have an edit button in a couple different contexts. Well, let's switch over to the completed code. I'll validate that for a second. So it passes linting, passes tests. Yes. And then we can take a look at that in a browser. So here we have the record view again, but now it has an edit button and some hub and spoke navigation. You can modify the record, hit save, and see that the changes are reflected. So that pushes through the data service we created earlier, updates the record. Looking at the generated code, so this is the view page. It pulls in the app view, but also wraps it in a Sky page with a header and some navigation. And then we also handle a wait, to defer loading the view until the actual data is in place. So we create an edit service. Very simple service, has one method, but it makes it easier to call edit and open that edit modal from a couple different contexts rather than repeating that logic elsewhere. Then the actual edit component uses a reactive form. That's Angular's form service. and then the markup for the form. So we leverage Sky input box to wrap all our form inputs. And an example unit test, leveraging test harnesses to access the components. All right, buckle up. Here's where it starts to get exciting. We've got the view, we've got the edit. We're going to start bringing pieces together. We're going to create a data grid. So the data grid is going to show an interactive list of records where we can sort and manage. For ours, we're going to add a context menu and a toolbar. And we'll show a list of records, have a drop down, be able to sort and categorize. And then we're also going to show a flyout component. This is a kind of dialog, comes out from the right-hand side, and it provides a view of the record without stepping away from the list of records. So you can kind of page through the records, look at individual in detail without necessarily skipping back and forth between a list and a record page. It just flies out. All right, let's go generate some of that code. So to make this work, we need one more type in our data model, profile row. We are going to create the list, and that'll hold the data grid. We need a context menu component, and that'll be the drop down on the left. Following the documentation, we need to add the AG grid styles. So we have the style sheet in our Angular JSON. Let's go take a look at the code for that. Switching over to the O5 data grid branch, run our lint, run our tests, make sure we're in a good place. Hopefully everything passes. 100%. Nice. I'll pull that up in our browser. So here's our data grid. See a list of records. We can toggle the needs attention flag. Click into the view, it flies out. And we use our iterator buttons to kind of scroll through records. And we still have a dedicated page for viewing each record. Back button's not ready yet, but the edit button, you can see here, we'll pull up the edit, make changes, and go back to the list. The new button uses the same form as the edit button, which creates a new record. I'll not save that right now. Let's take a look at the code. Here's the context menu. It's just a 3-item drop-down menu. Pretty straightforward. Using HTML buttons. And here's the actual grid. So we have some templates for the linked columns. And then we show the grid inside of a Sky page. And we use a data manager for the toolbar functionality. And the actual data grid is that Sky AG grid wrapper and the AG grid Angular component. Take a look at the TypeScript. We need to define some settings, the column definitions for the grid. Says what each column does. And we need some styles for the grid. And this sets the styles for the link columns. There you have it. All right, we're into our last component. We have a view, we have an edit, we have a data grid. Now we're going to add an action hub. And this provides some decision support by providing in-context information and calling out which records need direct action. Let's go ahead and generate that code. There's just one component, hub. And then switch over to the prepared code. Take a look at what that actually looks like. Make sure it's all in a good place. Linting, testing, test 100% coverage, it's great. Take a look at our browser. There's our action hub. So we're bringing back the Welcome to Sky UX content, putting that in the Action Hub content area. And up top, we're calling out the 8 animals flagged as needing attention. So it counts the needs attention flags. It gives you a summary of where we're at. And then right into our data list, thumb through records, and take next steps. Taking a look at the code, the Action Hub is very simple. Not a lot of HTML. It's mostly configuration. On the TypeScript side, we have that needs attention. It's calculating a count for the needs attention items and creating a link for that. And then it's also pulling in related links to show on the page. There you have it. Pretty straightforward. So taking a look at the routes for the application. The default page is our hub. And then we have the animal profiles path points to the data grid. And the animal profiles view with an ID points to the view page. Looking at the configuration, we're using input binding. So we have an ID in the route becomes an ID in the component. And we're using hash location simply because that works well with GitHub Pages hosting. So that might depend on your hosting environment. All right, I know that was a lot. I'm happy to answer any questions if folks would like to see anything more in depth. We're going to continue to point out some factors about the code. So here. Share a different window. Here's the spa. If we look over at the GitHub site, you're able to see the code over here. Some other things to call out. SkyUX has a theme service where we need to provide additional code to support the theming, kind of the style sheets around the components. And so we use a theme called Modern, and that just pulls in a certain amount of spacing. There are additional parameters you can pass in here if you want to adjust that a little more, but that just provides the kind of styles. Other things to call out, you can see the example configuration files here. So the prettier we installed that, there's some additional configuration here. I didn't go over in the demo if you're interested in seeing that. And as well as ESLint, there's an additional configuration step to get this all set up. So we pull in the SkyUX configs here. All right. We're coming to the end of our time. If there's no further questions, I'll let Dan take over. Thank you all.
Okay, well, thank you for the presentation, John, and to all that attended here. Really appreciate your participation here today. As I mentioned, there is a survey here of just 4 questions that I'm launching now. So if you could please just take a couple minutes to submit that, that'd be much appreciated. And unless there's any further questions, that wraps up our session. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll stick around for a couple minutes if anybody comes up with anything. But we're good.